Hi, can someone explain to me why this man is not in jail? This is the owner of Return to Nature Funeral Home in Colorado Springs, Colorado. After a report of an abhorrent smell on his property, authorities raided it and found 115 improperly stored, decomposing bodies. The CBI announced today that that number has actually risen. The number of individuals found is up to at least 189, and they said that number could increase. This man and his wife were selling grieving families fake ashes, allegedly. So why is this man not in jail yet? Can they not get him on anything?
My mother and I had got into an argument 2 days before, and it was about my feeding tube. I'm like, I no longer need this feeding tube. Can we please have it removed?
Did you refuse to have Gypsy's feeding tube removed?
And she said no. And I had an upcoming surgery, and I didn't want to have it, so I asked her, please tell the doctor I don't need this surgery. I've had it 20 times before. Why do we have to have it again? And she's like, there's nothing I can do about it. The doctor wants it. And so I became very numb to plan B. And I talked to Nick. He had me talk to Victor, who initially was the one that was going to do the murder.
Victor was what Nick described as his evil alter ego.
And he was like, ask Victor, please. And I said, Victor, will you please come to my mother for me? Because I can't do it myself.
Earlier this week, a lifeguard in Malibu, California opened up a barrel that was on the beach only to find a body inside, and now a homicide investigation is underway. This past Sunday, a maintenance worker at the Malibu Lagoon State Beach saw a black plastic barrel floating in the lagoon and brought it in with a kayak. He didn't open it at the time, but the next morning, a lifeguard on duty spotted the same barrel back out in the lagoon. He swam out and brought it back into the beach, and when he noticed how heavy it was, he opened it to see what was inside. And that's when he found a man's body. The origin of the barrel is unclear, but it's possible that it was brought in with the tide from the ocean. The man's identity has still yet to be remained as well, and homicide detectives are now investigating and have not released many details. However, they did note that the foot did not look very decomposed, indicating that the body may have not been in there very long. Investigators are also looking into security footage in the area to try to determine where the barrel may have come from and who may have disposed of it. Like I said, they have yet to identify the remains, and the investigation is ongoing. But this is just so eerie, and I hope they can figure it out quickly.
This footage hides the most disturbing secret. It was taken on August 12, 2000 in Vallejo, California. The girl in the window is 8-year-old Mitzi Sanchez. She looks happy in her father's arms, surrounded by friends and family. But on her birthday, Mitzi's life will take a shocking turn for the worse. 12 years earlier, Amber Swartz Garcia is playing jump rope in her front yard in Pinole, California, when she's abducted in broad daylight. After years of searching with no solid leads, the 7-year-old is presumed dead. Her body is never found. December 9, 1999, 11 years after the disappearance of Amber, 7-year-old Ziana Fairchild goes missing after witnesses saw her talking to a man at a Vallejo gas station. 1 year passes, and still Ziana is nowhere to be found.
I miss you guys.
For over 12 years, the state of California is terrorized by a serial killer targeting children. Having made 8 victims already, no one knows where he will strike next. But on August 12, 2000, 8-year-old Mitzi Sanchez will become the last victim of the serial killer. She will be forever known as the one who escaped and brought him to justice.
Vallejo police are again asking for the public's help tonight in locating a missing 8-year-old girl.
To the person who took my daughter, I don't care what they done to her, just bring her back to me. I just want to see my daughter again.
There was someone out there that was hunting children.
I was sucking and cutting at the same time. I liked it, she revealed. She then went on to say, I didn't know what to do. Shabusiness, who was caught on tape, chuckling at different intervals during the questioning, further confessed that the first thing she took off was Therian's head. She then admitted feeling very thrilled and enthusiastic about violating his lifeless body. Detective David Graff from the Green Bay Police Department, who was one of the officers who interviewed Shabiznes, took the stand on Wednesday. He stated that Shabiznes admitted to choking Therian initially as part of foreplay, but then she enjoyed it and wanted to see what would happen. She then confessed to cuddling with Therian's decapitated body. In his words, he says, she described how she had S contact with the body in terms of playing with his private. Also, she described that she had an S toy that she placed into his mouth, and that she had also cuddled with the body. As stated by the prosecutors, Shabiznes used a dog collar to choke Therian at the Green Bay residence where he lived with his mother. After his death, she essayed him and then proceeded to dismember his body using kitchen knives. In a subsequent horrifying discovery, Therian's mother found her son's severed head and private in a bucket located in the basement of their home. Later on, investigators made more shocking discoveries as they found fragments of Therian's body scattered all over the basement.
It's another rainy day in the South. Go out and be some sunshine today.
This woman is a prime example of how easily you can deceive people on your social media. This is Farron Jill Hudson, 35 years old, from Alabama. And the story starts in 2021 when her husband was arrested on 5 counts of possessing obscene material with a child under the age of 17. Later that year, he was rearrested for 76 counts of possession of child porn. Now, at the time, he claimed that police had planted these images on his phone, these videos, and there was an investigation undertaken. But when police investigated James's phone, they found evidence that linked his wife, Jill, to these crimes. Yes, Jill, the happy-go-lucky TikToker talking about God and sunshine. So after this new evidence came to light, new charges were added and Jill was arrested. And these new charges included incest, essay of a child, and production of obscene materials with a child under the age of 17. So during her interrogation, after she was arrested, Jill was shown a still image from one of these child porn videos that she allegedly helped to produce. And she confirmed to detectives and investigators that indeed it was her and another child in that video. Apparently, Jill confirmed that it was her in the video performing an obscene act with a child. But after she was arrested, Jill was stupid enough to call a family member, and on the phone call from jail, she asked her family member to go check her devices and destroy evidence. So obviously authorities were listening into that phone call. They were able to get search warrants for all of her other electronics, and they're undergoing a search of her property right now. It's just wild. You wouldn't imagine that that woman who posted that video would be accused of doing such horrific things with children. And it just goes to show that these predators are everywhere, so we have to stay vigilant and keep our children safe. That should be our #1 priority in this nation.
Update, Jade's ruining the vacations with her TikToks.
That was the last TikTok ever posted by TikToker Anthony Barajas, aka Anthony Michael. On July 26, 2021, Anthony and his friend Riley were seeing a movie. On that evening, they were seeing the ironically violent film The Forever Purge, which itself is a critique on American violence. On that day, the two of them were just sitting inside of the theater enjoying the film when suddenly they were both shot in the back of the head. Now, sadly, Riley Goodrich, who was 18 at the time, would die at the scene, but Anthony, who was 19 at the time, was taken to a hospital but passed away a few days later. But why did this happen? Well, it's not a very clear story. So this is Joseph Jimenez, and he was actually arrested the day after the murder. He was the guy who pulled the trigger. Now, Joseph's friends were actually in the movie theater. There were only 6 people in the theater at the time. And they said that during the movie, Joseph was acting strange. He was mumbling to himself, and at one point he left the theater and came back in with some sort of a package. Joseph's friends then left the theater because they were afraid of what he might do, and a few moments later they saw Joseph running out of the side door, getting into his vehicle and speeding away. So it turns out that Joseph had just randomly decided to murder Riley and Anthony. There was no motivation, he didn't know these two, he just decided he had to kill somebody. And strangely, their bodies weren't discovered until after the movie was over, because there was only 6 people in the theater, including Joseph, his 3 friends, and these two. So according to Joseph, he was hearing voices that were saying his friends and family were going to be killed if he didn't take a life. He also stated that he wished he didn't do it, but unfortunately, you can't take back an action like that. It's just chilling that even just sitting in a movie theater, an act of violence like this can strike you. And obviously, rest in peace to Riley and Anthony. This is such a tragic story.
This mother hid sticky notes in her daughter's sock to be saved from captivity. This 28-year-old mother and 2 kids, 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son, Mason Dominguez, were held captive by a man named Brandon Tusland. This all started in January 2021 when the father of the 2 kids, Eli Dominguez, passed away from pneumonia. The mother was happily married to Eli, but since his death, she began to struggle financially. That's when Eli's former friend, Brandon, offered to support her and her 2 kids. In March 2021, the mother and 2 kids moved into Brandon's home, and that's when he became controlling and abusive. He alienated her from her family, made her quit her job, and confiscated her phone. He put locks on the bedroom doorknobs, installed motion sensors, and duct taped her to the bed. She was also handcuffed when she rode in the car with him. But one day, the mother spotted a sticky notepad and a pen in his car, and that's when she began a weeks-long plan to seek help. The mother found the perfect chance to put a sticky note in her daughter's sock, and on February 22nd at 8:40 a.m., the 7-year-old girl went to school and gave the sticky note to her teacher. The note said that her mother was being held against her will and she needed help right away. School officials notified authorities and Brandon was arrested right away. But it doesn't end there. This is when things get super disturbing. Brandon kept her kids away from her most of the time, and especially when she was locked up. And she actually had not seen her 4-year-old son, Mason Dominguez, since December 11th, and she suspected he was dead. When the mother lost full contact with her son, she knew she had to find a way out to save her and her daughter. When police searched his house, they found the remains of 4-year-old Mason Dominguez in his freezer in his garage.
Imagine accidentally shooting and killing your boyfriend as a YouTube prank. Mona Lisa Perez and Pedro Ruiz started dating in 2013. In 2015, they welcomed their first daughter, Aaliyah, to their family. Pedro had to work to support the family, and this is where he got the idea to start a YouTube channel with his girlfriend where they would do crazy pranks and risky stunts in order to get some kind of money and fame from it. One of the videos that Pedro came up with was to have his girlfriend, Mona Lisa, shoot at an encyclopedia book that he would be holding in front of him with a .50 caliber gun. On June 26, 2017, Mona Lisa made a post onto her social media stating that the video they were about to post was going to be insane. Then proceeded to set up their cameras outside of their home in Hallstatt, Minnesota. There was one camera that was fixed on the ladder and the other one that was on top of the car. Pedro asked Mona Lisa to brace up and prepare herself because he could tell she was reluctant to go through with the stunt. He told her to fire at the book and not him, and that they would be good to go if she did so. Mona Lisa replied by saying that she was scared, but they decided to execute the plan anyway. Pedro then proceeded to pick up a 1.5-inch thick encyclopedia that was laminated in hardcover and held it in front of his chest. He then asked his girlfriend to step 30 centimeters away from him, stating that that's what he had tried earlier, and he was able to prove that the bullet would not pierce through the encyclopedia. Mind you, they were using a Desert Eagle pistol, which is known as one of the most powerful semi-automatic pistols out there. She then aimed the gun at her boyfriend while their 3-year-old daughter watched, shot it, and that was the end for Pedro Ruiz. She immediately called 911, stating that a YouTube stunt had gone terribly wrong. The Minnesota police arrested her on charges of second-degree manslaughter. She kept telling the police that she was forced to do the stunt, that she didn't want to, and that it was him who wanted it, and that she was going to be paying the price for it now. She was found not fully responsible for the incident, so he convicted her to serve a 180-day jail term. She was then kept under a 10-year supervised probation period. During the incident, she was pregnant with their second daughter, and during her sentencing, she was allowed to alternate between jail and home time, so she would spend 10 days in jail and 10 days at home. What do you guys think about this case? I'm so curious to hear about y'all's thoughts, because do y'all think 180 days was enough? Prank or no prank? Do you think that was a fair sentence? Let me know your thoughts down below.
Let's talk about the true story behind Candy on Hulu and Love and Death on HBO Max and how Betty Gore was axed 41 times. Betty Gore was born on January 9th, 1950, and while she was attending college, she met a teaching assistant named Alan Gore through one of her classes. Two of them immediately hit it off, they began dating, and in 1970, Alan and Betty decided to get married. Soon after their wedding, they had their first daughter named Alyssa, and after this, they decided to move to the small town of Wiley, Texas to start a new life. Now, at first, their marriage seemed to be great. They were very in love with each other, and they were excited to grow their family. However, according to reports, Betty did struggle with anxiety and occasional depression. Alan would often have to travel for work, so this meant that Betty was home alone with Alyssa, and this would just cause her a lot of anxiety. She would constantly be calling his office to check in on him. She would call the hotel he was staying at just to talk to him. The traveling was causing a lot of issues in their relationship, and since they had just moved to a new town, Betty didn't really have a lot of friends. She wanted to be more active in the community, so she decided to join her local church, and that's when she began making friends. She started to become friends with a woman named Candace Montgomery, also known as Candy. Both sang in the choir, and the reason they started to become closer is because Betty's daughter, Alyssa, started to grow closer to Candy's daughter. Now, a little bit about Candy. She was married to a man named Pat Montgomery, and the two of them lived a very comfortable life in Wiley, Texas. Her husband had a very good job, so she was able to stay home and take care of their two kids. And she had a very nice house. They actually called her house the party house because that's where everyone would get together to hang out. She was friends with everyone in the community. I mean, she was kind of like your typical PTA mom. Even though Betty had joined the church and had started making new friends, things between her and Alan were still not good. She even confided in her friend Candy and told her that her and Alan did not have sex. She just didn't know what else to do or how to get the sparks going again. However, Betty ended up getting pregnant with a second daughter, and she thought that this would change things between her and Alan. And it somewhat did. He was excited about their second daughter. Candy was excited about this as well. She even threw Betty a baby shower at her own house. Alan even told Betty that they were going to take a trip to Europe, just the two of them without children, so that they could reconnect and just be with each other. So it seemed like things were going well. On Friday, June 13th, 1990, Alan was away on a business trip in Minnesota, and Betty was at home taking care of their newborn daughter and getting everything ready for their trip to Europe. Their oldest daughter, Alyssa, actually spent the night at Candy's house, and she was supposed to come back later that day because she had swim practice. However, Alyssa and Candy's daughter really wanted to have another sleepover, so Candy called Betty and asked her if it was okay if Alyssa spent another night there. Betty told Candy that Alyssa had swim practice, and that's when Candy offered to go to Betty's house, pick up the swimsuit, and take Alyssa to practice. So Betty agreed to this plan. Later that morning, Candy stopped by Betty's house to pick up the bathing suit, and then she left. As the day continued to progress, Alan called the house just to check in on Betty, but he wasn't able to get in contact with her. He called one of the neighbors to go check on Betty, and that's when they discovered that Betty was dead. Okay, more in part 2.
Oh, hey, Dad.
What's going on down here?
What do you mean? We're playing Wii.
What's up with this popcorn all over the couch and all over the floor?
You did that, Sadie, right?
It was me and you. Pick it up.
Well, we're still eating it.
Yeah. What about the stuff I asked you to do?
Okay, well,
You know, take the trash out, put the dishes away.
What?
I get home, the trash is full, the dishwasher's still full of dishes.
I thought I did that. I did that, right? Sadie?
I don't know.
What's up with the camera?
She started filming, I don't know. But anyway,
You sleep till noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You don't go to bed all night. And you got time to sit down here and play a video game?
I forgot about the dishes and stuff.
Why did you forget?
I'm sorry.
Because you're busy playing a video game.
I'll do it next time, okay?
No.
No. Why? Why?
Because I asked you to do these things. 2 things. Oh, and Grandpa. Grandpa just got out of the hospital. And I asked you 3 days ago to cut his lawn for him because he can't do it right now.
Well, me and Grandma were doing that.
I had to go over and do it. I had to cut his grass. All you do is play video games,
well, I mean,
stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning, and then sleep till 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
What I do, okay?
What?
It's what I do.
What?
I'm a gamer.
Yeah, I'll fix that.
Huh?
What are you talking
Let's just go back to playing. What is he doing?
What? Dad!
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 What are you doing? Dad! Dad!
Dad! Dad!
What? Dad!
Dad!
Dad! Dude, Dad! Stop it! Stop!
Wait. Done with it.
Dad!
What was that noise?
What even was that?
Dad! What's going on?
Do you think that's a sane way to deal with things?
We gotta spend some quality time together!
That is not how you do things.
Point the camera.
That's not how you treat your son.
I told you to get some things done around here. And all you do is stay in bed all the way to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You stay up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You don't get nothing done.
Sorry.
Guess what? You're going to get some stuff done because there's no more video games.
What?
And I'm going to start shutting the internet off at nighttime.
This is Peter Scully, one of the worst pedophiles in world history. I'm about to tell you his story, but seriously guys, this one is incredibly disturbing. It's so dark, and viewer discretion is really advised for this video. So Peter Scully, he's still alive. He was from Australia, he had a family there, but he was engaging in criminal activities, and he eventually fled the country and moved to the Philippines. And this is where the darkness really began. While he was in Australia, Peter Scully started up an international child sex abuse ring. The things that were done to these kids are, I mean, I can't even talk about them here on TikTok, but he also started up a pay-per-view video service. And with these videos, he was producing CP, but one of the most extreme forms of CP that can possibly be produced. So how did all this happen? Well, when he was out living in the Philippines, Peter Scully had 2 Filipina girlfriends. They would go out to the streets, they would find kids that needed money or looked impoverished, they would bring them back to the house they shared with Peter, and the things that went on afterwards are literally unspeakable. Remember, like I mentioned before, Peter was the head of an international ring of people that enjoyed the abuse of kids, and he provided videos for these clients. But his most infamous video was titled Daisy's Destruction. This video that he produced was so extreme, so hardcore that people on the internet, when they heard about what happened in the video, literally thought that it was an urban legend, and they thought that there was no way this could be real. This is an actual screenshot of the beginning of the video. This is a screenshot from the very beginning of the video. In the video, 3 young girls are repeatedly tortured for hours and hours on end by Peter Scully and his 2 girlfriends from the Philippines. They are beaten, they are sexually abused. I mean, I can't even describe, like I said on TikTok, some of the things that happened in this video. And 18-month-old Daisy. Now keep in mind that all of this was on camera. That's the most disturbing part of this. One of Peter's victims actually ended up dying. They were buried in his house. And this sick individual literally sold that video footage across the world. And what's even more disturbing is that there were lots of people willing to pay to see that video. I'm not kidding. People were paying $10,000 to view this video. That is absolute insanity that there are people that sick out there in the world. And this is only the beginning of the crimes that this guy carried out. Some of the other stuff that we're going to touch on is absolutely disgusting. It's just horrific. And the story of how Peter Scully was eventually identified and arrested is extremely captivating. I'm going to run out of time here on this video, but if you want to see a part 2, let me know below. The story is far from over. This is Jared Fogle, one of the worst pedophiles in American history. So if you don't know who Jared Fogle was, he was the spokesperson for Subway for a number of years. Jared initially became famous and then eventually became the spokesman of Subway because he dropped so much weight while eating a Subway diet. According to Jared, he lost almost 245 pounds while eating almost exclusively from Subway. Obviously, this was a huge story, and when Subway heard about this, they contacted Jared and eventually made him the spokesman for their entire company. I swear to God, I remember this. For years, you couldn't turn on the TV without seeing this guy's face. So in 2004, when Jared was at the height of his popularity, he launched the Jared Foundation, a foundation determined to fight childhood obesity. This foundation saw Jared touring schools across the nation, talking to kids about losing weight, and yeah, just being heavily involved with children, which people at the time thought was a great thing. But it was when he was away from the cameras, behind the scenes, when Jared was engaging in some of the most deplorable behavior I've ever read about. So in 2007, a radio host and journalist from Florida came forward to the FBI and reported that Jared was saying and doing some concerning things. Apparently, while at a middle school event, Jared had been talking to her about performing lewd acts on a minor. He had texted her about all of these things, and she even recorded him saying all of this stuff. At one point, apparently, Jared even asked this journalist if she could install webcams in her children's bedrooms so he could watch them. Obviously, this was concerning. This journalist recorded all of this, turned it into the FBI, but they told her that they couldn't do anything because they didn't have enough evidence. And now we got to talk about Russell Taylor, a guy who was heavily involved in Jared's foundation. So when he wasn't working on the Children's Foundation, this guy, Russell Taylor, was producing CP in his home. Apparently, between the years 2011 and 2015, Russell Taylor had videotaped minors in his own home and traded photographs of them with none other than, you guessed it, Jared Fogle, king of the footlong. According to court documents, Jared actually asked Russell if he could move some of the nanny cams in his home so he could watch children in varying states of undress or while they were naked taking a bath. Russell also claimed that Jared made him set up accounts on porn sites in his name, and he wanted to basically run his whole CP operation for him. Well, shortly after Russell Taylor was arrested, Jared Fogel's home was raided, and guess what they found? A ton of CP. On the same day that his home was raided, Subway severed all ties with Jared, and some new disturbing facts came to light during the trial. Apparently, years prior, Jared had been texting a Subway franchisee named Cindy, and over these texts, he talked about wanting to abuse kids aged 9 to 16. He told Cindy she should sell herself for sex on Craigslist, and even asked her to arrange a sexual meetup between him and her 16-year-old cousin. Eventually, Jared pled guilty to possession of CP and traveling to conduct an illicit sexual behavior with a minor. Apparently, while in New York City, he paid to have sex with a 17-year-old girl. But this story isn't over yet. I'm going to post part 2, and it definitely gets more interesting from here on out. This news reporter took her own life on live TV. This is Christine Chubbuck. She was born in Hudson, Ohio in 1944. And in her adult life, she earned a broadcasting degree and started working for various news TV stations. Throughout her life, Christine worked in Cleveland, in Pittsburgh, in Canton, Ohio, but eventually she ended up in Sarasota, Florida. Now, Christine spoke with her family members at length throughout her life about her struggles with depression and her ideation of the thought of taking her own life. She had been seeing a psychiatrist for several weeks leading up to her own death, and it's a widespread belief that it was Christine's lack of focus on intimate personal relationships that led her to take her own life. So it's been reported that Christine had a crush on her coworker George. At one point, she baked him a cake for his birthday and she sought out some sort of a romantic connection with George, but she was crushed to find out that he was already intimately involved with another reporter. Throughout her time at the station in Sarasota, Florida, Christine exhibited some concerning behavior. She was rude and standoffish to people who made friendly gestures toward her. She didn't really seem like she wanted to make friends. And a week before she took her own life, she told the night news editor, a man named Rob, that she had recently bought a gun and joked about taking her own life on air. Now, Rob brushed this off and said he didn't want to respond to this sick humor, but he had no idea that Christine was actually being serious. So a few days before she took her own life, Christine hosted a party. And a lot of her co-workers, fellow reporters attended this party, and they saw that Christine was completely different. She seemed to be so happy, she was having fun, she was carefree. One sportscaster that was at the party even stated later on that this was a completely different side of Christine, and that they didn't realize this was her going away party, her way to say goodbye. Then came the morning of July 15th, 1974. On that morning, Christine confused her coworkers by stating she had to read a newscast before the program she hosted, which she never did. So she spent 8 minutes reading off local news stories, headlines, and even covered a story about a shooting that had happened in Sarasota. But when it came time to play the newsreel about the shooting that had already been filmed, Christine broke the script. So I'm going to read this quote to you. She looked at the camera and said, "In keeping with the WXLT practice of presenting the most immediate and complete records of local blood and guts news, TV40 presents what is believed to be a television first, in living color, an exclusive coverage of an attempted unaliving." Christine then pulled out a revolver and shot herself behind her right ear. She fell forward violently, and the director of the television program then faded the screen to black. The station then ran a standard public service announcement and began playing a movie. Eerily, when the news director then found the papers that Christine had been reading from, he discovered that the entire thing had been scripted and written out by Christine. This included the stories she was going to cover, the act of actually taking her own life, and it even included a third-person perspective of what the next person taking over on the broadcast should read to the audience. Christine was then taken to a local hospital where she was pronounced dead 14 hours later. So for years, the television station that aired this footage claimed that the actual footage, the tape of Christine doing this, was lost forever. And people considered this to be a piece of lost media, meaning a piece of footage that existed at one point but doesn't exist anymore. But back in 2016, the station said that they had actually located the video. But obviously, they're never going to release it, and I don't think they should. Either way, Christine was remembered with fondness by everybody around her. She had a big funeral. Lots of people, public officials came forward and attended the funeral and said that she was just an amazing person. And obviously, this is such a tragic story. And it was indeed the very first time that somebody had taken their own life on live TV.